Hello, and welcome to the Module 2 of the Data Analytics course. I still remain Kubiat Morgan, and let's get right into it. In this module, we are going to be focusing on the use of pivot tables to visualize our data. Now, pivot tables are a very, very important part of Microsoft Excel, and they're used generally to summarize data in very interesting ways. The flexibility offered by pivot tables is what makes it a very important and interesting feature in Microsoft Excel. Consider a simple use case. You have been employed as the new data officer in the primary healthcare board for Plateau State, and you've been tasked with summarizing or drawing inferences from the family planning data from over 6 months in Riom local government area in Plateau State. Let's see how we can use pivot tables to achieve our set goals. If we decide to take a look at the data sets that we have before us here, we can immediately recognize a couple of things from this data set. First, we have the serial number. Then we have the family planning commodities that have been used. Then we have the amount of each of those commodities that were used. Then we have the date that the records were taken, and then the PHC name. Now, just looking at this information, the data set that we have here just off the top, the data here looks quite jumbled up. We cannot really make any meaningful inferences from this data set with the way it was set up. And so our job as the new data officer is to, try to arrange these data sets in a way that, would make sense and would give more information about what is actually going on here. Looking at the data set, first thing we would notice also is that the current data set is just a range of values, right? So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to convert our data set from just a regular Excel data range to a table. And to do this, I would first introduce you to a very basic shortcut that you can use to select data in your spreadsheet. So I'm going to select the entire table, excluding the title here. So I just click at the first cell, that is cell A2, and then I would press and hold Shift on my keyboard. At the same time, press and hold Command if you're on a Mac and Control if you're on a Windows. And then I would use my arrow keys to select the data across rows and across columns. So if I use my arrow key right, mind you, I am still pressing and holding Shift and Control or Command. That would select all the columns that has data to the right, and then when I still holding that, press the down arrow key, it selects all the rows that has data to the bottom of our spreadsheet. So that's like a quick shortcut you can use to highlight entire data sets in the case where you are working with a very large data set. Alternatively, you can simply click anywhere inside your data set and press Control or Command A, but notice that this selects everything including the title, but we don't want to select the title, so we can hold our Control or Command and click the title cell, and that will just select the data that we are looking for. So I'm just going to use the other method where I hold Shift and Control or Command and tap on my arrow keys to select my entire data set. The next thing that we're going to do is to convert this into a table. We are going to go to the Insert ribbon. So I've just clicked on the Insert ribbon, and in this group here, you can see this group of buttons where we have pivot tables, recommended pivot tables, and table. We are going to click on Table to convert this into a table. Once we click on that, Excel automatically recognizes the data range that we just selected. And all you have to do is just ensure that you click my table has headers, because we selected our table with the table headers. Okay, and we'll just click OK once we're done with that. And as you can see, a special formatting has been applied to our data set. If we scroll up, you'll still see that the title is still there, so that has not been affected. But this formatting has been applied to our data set. And also we have another addition to our set of tabs. So we have a table ribbon that has just opened up. On the table ribbon, you can see here the table name for this specific table. And notice that if I click out of the data range of the table, the table ribbon disappears to show you that everything outside this boundary has not been marked as a table, so only the things inside this boundary. So once I click on any cell inside this table, you would notice that the table ribbon pops up. So you can edit the table name. Okay, you can you have options to summarize data with pivot tables, remove duplicates, or to convert the table back to a range. So in case you no longer need this as a table, you can select your data and click on convert to range. So let's just do that quickly and see. So if I select my data now, and I'm using the same shortcut I used, that is Shift Control or Shift Command and then the arrow keys to select, and I click convert to range, you'd see we have an alert here that says, do you want to convert the table to a normal range? And if we click yes, we see that the table ribbon has disappeared, which means this is no longer a table. However, the formatting for the table formatting that was applied, the styles that was applied to our data sets or the range is still there. And if you want to clear that too, you can still select your data set, and on the home ribbon, right, on the home ribbon, you locate this red this button that has the red icon that looks like an eraser, and you click on it and you can select clear format. If you click on clear all, your data is going to be cleared as well. So you click on what's on clear format. So once we click on that, we can strip our data set of every formatting that has been applied to it. Now that clear format also gives us one small issue. Notice the date column. The date column now becomes a numerical value. So to format our date back as a more readable date, we would highlight our date column. So I'm going to highlight the entire date column by clicking first on the title here, and then holding Shift and Command or Shift and Control if you're on the Windows, and then press or tap the down arrow key. So that selects all the data on the date column. And then on the home ribbon, I would come here to where I have my formatting options. That's my number formatting options. Click on the little drop down icon there, and then select one of short date or long date formatting. So I'm just going to select short date. And so once I select short date, you can see that our date has been reformatted to a more readable date. Okay, so let's get back to converting this to a table. So I'm selecting the data set again, and then I'm going to click on insert and click on table. It shows the prompt to select the data for the table, which we've already done. So that has already been automatically populated here. And then we select that our table has headers because we highlighted the table headers together with the data set. And then I click on OK. And so we're back here. Now, if you can remember from module 1, these arrows are usually These arrows usually appear once we've selected or filter is active. And you can see here, we have a checkbox here that says filter button. So we can toggle that on or off depending on what you want to do. So this is actually another way you can activate, filtering on your data set. So you could just convert it to a table, and then by default, you would have the filter buttons show up on each of the columns. However, if it does not show up, you can simply go to the table. You can go to the table ribbon and then toggle it on or off. To the right here, we have different options that we could use to style or change the formatting of our table. For now, we will just leave it as something basic, and let's get to the crux of this module, pivot tables. To create a pivot table, we can either use summarize with pivot table on the table ribbon, or we use the insert tab. So I'm going to click on the insert tab, and then I'm going to click on pivot table. Now, once I click on pivot table, the entire data range for our table has been highlighted. Now, if you see the prompt that is up here, it says you can either choose the data that you want to analyze. So you can either select a table or a range. In this case, our table is already automatically selected because our cursor was already in a cell in that table. So the table has been selected. Now, if this wasn't a table, if it was a data range, you would have to, manually select it like I showed us just a few minutes ago. So we select our table. In this case, our table is already selected automatically. Also, you can use data from an external source. Okay, now if you want to use this, you would most likely need to have some drivers installed on your computer to be able to access an external database from your system. So but for now, we're just going to stick with the table, and then next we get to choose where to place the pivot table. Now we can, by default, the pivot table is usually sent to a new worksheet, right? So Excel will automatically create a new worksheet and then would create your pivot table there. Alternatively, you can select your pivot table to show up on the existing worksheet. We're going to do both options, but the new worksheet is usually very straightforward. So if I select a new worksheet right now and I click on OK, so you can see that a new worksheet has been created. So sheet 2, just it will be given a random name, right? And then we have a field here that has been designated for our pivot table. And then we have a sidebar here where we are going to do lots of the modifications for our pivot table. And then we have our ribbon, a new ribbon that just opened up. So 2 new ribbons, right? So pivot table analyze and then design. So these 2 new ribbons open up so you can modify or adjust the formatting of your pivot table as required. I'm going to go ahead and delete this sheet because I want us to be able to have a view of our data while we are going to be working with the pivot table. So I'm going to create the pivot table on our existing sheet. So to delete this, I will just right click on the sheet name and then click on delete. So that is going to permanently delete the sheet together with the pivot table that was created. So we'll go ahead to create a pivot table again from this table, and we do that by clicking on insert and then clicking on pivot table. The data range has been selected to be table 2, which is the current table that we are looking at. And then I'm going to click on existing worksheet. Now, once you click on existing worksheet, you will be required to enter a table or a range. In this case, while the cursor is inside this box, you can just highlight a part of your worksheet to be used as the pivot table. So I'm just going to, I'm going to select this space so that our pivot table will be created on that spot. And now you can see Excel has automatically preloaded the data range that we've just selected, and we can just click on OK. So we have the pivot table has been created on the space that we selected. Notice that if you click out of this boundary that has been defined here for the pivot table, you will not have any of the pivot table options show up. So you have to click in this area for the pivot table menu, context menu, that's the sidebar, and the ribbons to show up.